How do we measure spoken fluency? How do we know someone is fluent? If I listen to someone speaking and I think this person is fluent, isn't that just my opinion? Actually, our opinion is based on certain characteristics of speech. When we listen to a fluent speaker, we can sense those characteristics. It's also possible to measure those characteristics. In my own research, I've done exact measurements of these characteristics, but it's a lot of work and it's not really necessary except for research. What's important is to understand the characteristics of speech that we can improve. If we understand how to measure fluency, then we can practice it more effectively. So I'm going to tell you about the 3 most important measurements that affect spoken fluency. They are speech rate, pause location, and length of runs. Let's take a look at each of these. First is speech rate. Speech rate means how quickly someone speaks. Fluent speakers have a high speech rate because they can speak quickly. Disfluent speakers have a low speech rate because they struggle to speak quickly. But how should we measure speech rate? We could count how many words a person says in 1 minute, or words per minute. This works for quick measurement, but it's not always accurate because some words are short, like and some words are long, like transcendentalism. It clearly takes less time to say 0.1 seconds, than it does to say transcendentalism, 1.2 seconds. Instead, we can measure syllables per minute. A syllable is a single unit of pronunciation. Any part of a word that requires a shift in pronunciation is a new syllable. Is 1 syllable. Transcendentalism is 6 syllables. Transcendentalism. So the best way to accurately measure speech rate is by syllables per minute. But words per minute will also work for a quick measurement. Speech rate varies quite a bit in native speakers, as some people naturally speak fast and some people naturally speak slow. But in conversational English, the average is between 200 and 300 syllables per minute. However, counting syllables is much more difficult than counting words, so it's really only necessary for research. In my classes, where students need to speak or give presentations, I usually just use words per minute because it can be done quickly for many students. As the students speak more, we can compare to see if their words per minute speech rate improves. The next measure is pause location. We often pause while we are speaking. Sometimes it's to break apart ideas, and sometimes it's to plan what we want to say next. However, where you pause in your sentences has a large effect on fluency. People who are fluent pause between clauses. A sign of disfluency is to pause mid-clause. So first, a clause is a group of words that form a piece of information. A clause is smaller than a sentence. A simple sentence can be a single clause, but sentences are often made up of more than one clause. Here's an example sentence. Last weekend, I went shopping with my friends, and we went to a new restaurant for lunch. This sentence has 3 clauses. Last weekend, I went shopping with my friends, and we went to a new restaurant for lunch. Each clause is a piece of information. It sounds very natural to pause between each clause. Last weekend, I went shopping with my friends, and we went to a new restaurant for lunch. But if we pause mid-clause, last weekend I went shopping with my friends and we went to a new restaurant for lunch. It sounds very unnatural. When fluent speakers plan what they are going to say, they plan and say 1 clause at a time. This allows them to plan what they will say next without interrupting an idea. Now, this doesn't mean that fluent speakers always pause between clauses. Some clauses, such as last weekend, are very short, so it's not necessary to pause after it. However, pausing mid-clause, such as in between the words last and weekend, is a sign of disfluency. When you listen to a native speaker, pay attention to their pauses. In fact, if you go back and watch this video again, you will hear a very clear pause between clauses and sentences. The third measure is length of runs, and this has the biggest effect on fluency. A run is a string of continuous speech without pauses. So the length of a run is how many syllables are spoken in between pauses. A fluent speaker can speak a lot before they need to pause, so they have long runs. A disfluent speaker can only say a little before they need to pause and think, so they have short runs. As we just said, it's natural to say one clause at a time. A fluent speaker will be able to plan and say longer clauses before pausing than a disfluent speaker. Now, of course, fluent speakers don't always say a lot, and sometimes they have short runs. So we need to measure all of their runs in a recording and find the average, or mean, length of run. A very fluent speaker will usually have an MLR of more than 7. A disfluent speaker will have an MLR of 3 or 4. When you listen to a native speaker, pay attention to how long they keep talking before pausing. Remember, their runs won't always be long, but some will be. Listen for their long runs. So these are the 3 most important measures that affect spoken fluency: speech rate, pause location, and length of runs. Now, I want you to listen for these in your narrow listening assignment. Especially, pay attention to the location of the speaker's pauses, and notice how much they say between pauses. In the next video, I'll talk about how we can improve spoken fluency, and I'll outline my own approach to teaching spoken fluency based on my research and the research of others.